What is the single most, you'll understand it when you're older, thing?
Time off. Working crazy hours in my early 20s was nice because I had a lot of money, but as I became older and more involved with my now fiancé and my friends, I realized that there's a balance. This drove me to look for a job with a little less pay but far better hours, and now I'm happy. Don't work like a slave, you'll miss a lot of good things in life. Edit. Thank you for all the awards. I didn't think this post or comment would blow up like this. Understanding why your parents wanted you to go play with the awkward kid, or why they were so keen to help you make friends. It's beyond annoying as a kid when your parents try to guide who make friends with, but most parents instinctually know that bad social habits start early, are hard to break, and can be a real burden when you are older. My mom never liked my friend group and it really annoyed me. Looking back, half of them were assholes anyway and the other half were already doing things that led them into a life of drug addiction after high school. I never got into drinking and drugs like that, but everyone around me was doing it and I had every opportunity to. Looking back, she was just looking out for me, and even though she didn't have proof of what we were doing, she was just an adult who had lived and could tell it wasn't a good group if friends. Friendships fading away. I remember my dad telling me all kinds of cool stories about things him and his friends did in the past. I even asked him, why aren't you still friends with these people? He really did basically say, it's complicated, you'll understand when you're older. Even back then I remember thinking, that's crazy, me and my friends will always be friends. Sitting here now in my early 30s and it really hits home. It is possible to do everything right and still fail. Don't let it consume you. Pick up the pieces and move on. I had to learn this after a project that I was on for 3 years was sabotaged and shit-canned. I did some amazing work, and poured my life into that project. In the end I had nothing to show for it. It put me in a real slump for a few years. I am still trying to pull myself out of it without becoming a cynical and jaded asshole. Hand-me-downs. I absolutely hated them, even though my grandma was a genius with them. Dyeing, artistic patches, new buttons. They just didn't last compared to the new clothes my older sister had. Then I had 3 boys in 6 years. I'm seriously grateful that my grandma tried so hard to make my hand-me-downs look good. I get it now. I totally thought that I was going to buy all new cute stuff for my kiddo. Then the pandemic hit and I hate buying online. My brother came by with an enormous bag full of clothes from size 18 meters 3T, and my sil had kept them all in pristine condition despite the fact that most of them had been worn by both of my nephews, and I'm so grateful. Kiddo won't need new clothes for at least a year, hopefully, he's growing fast. Same when I lost weight really rapidly. Buying new clothes is too expensive when they're going to be hanging off you in 2 months. Go to the thrift store. Edit. OMG. This is the first time that one of my comments has been so popular. And I got an award too, thank you for that. Thrift stores rule, but buy new underwear. New underwear is a basic human right, winking face. Edit 2. Another thing that I wanted to suggest is if you want to donate your used items to places other than thrift stores, if you don't have friends to pass the stuff along to, check and see if you have any community services that need the stuff. I used to work for a drug and domestic violence recovery center. The center has a program for women who are coming out of recovery from whatever they need help with, who are pregnant or have children under the age of 1. They provide emergency housing, counseling, and training on how to take care of your little one while also helping to recover from substance abuse if that's what the mother is receiving help with. If you have any community services like that, I'm sure they'd be thrilled to take your hand-me-downs. Time, wasting time, and how time flies. It's mid-deck and I'm saying to myself, what the heck, it's been 9 months of COVID and I can't believe this year is almost over. As you age it seems to go faster and faster. When I was younger I felt like time just dragged on some days. I can remember when I was school age, the year seemed to drag on forever, then when it did end we had the 6 weeks holidays. 6 whole weeks, with hour upon hour of sunshine. Towards the end of it school was but a distant memory. It felt like it would never end. Of course it always did when September finally arrived. Now I work at a school and it's terrifying how quickly we blaze through each term. Those same holidays are over in a flash. I think it's because now I'm older I'm consciously worried about making the most of the time off, not wasting it. When I was young the biggest worry was whether my friends and I would play in the woods or on the fell that day. Time wasn't a worry, we thought we had all the time in the world. A lot of people have said they think this is because we have more time to compare to as we age, but I think it's something else. I think time starts to fly by because of the way our brains process experiences and store them as memories. Have you ever been driving on the highway and suddenly you realize you have absolutely no recollection of the last 5 minutes? Were you asleep? What happened? Jesus, could you have died? The answer is no, you were fine. Your brain just played a trick on you. See, this happens most often during a commute to work, or during a drive you've taken a million times. Your brain just doesn't write anything you're doing to memory because there's 1,000 identical memories there already. It's not worth remembering. You're wired to remember important and different things, not mundane things. When you're young, everything is new and different, and when you look back, it seems like childhood lasted forever because your brain was gathering new experiences to hold on to. But as you get older, you're forced into a routine. How many days are exactly like the one before it, and will be exactly like the one after? If you're working a 9 to 5, probably most of them. You put your head down and work for a week, and it's like that week of your life just disappeared. Go on a vacation, however, to a place you've never been, doing things you've never done, and it feels like a lot longer. Try learning a new skill, practice it for as long as you can stand, and then check the clock. Surprise! It's only been half an hour. Sit down for just a moment to browse your Facebook feed and holy shit, how has it been an hour? If you want to stop feeling like that, I think the trick is to intentionally seek new experiences and skills. Literally getting older. Never thought much about when adults would say, "You're still young, just enjoy it." I always wanted to be older because I was tired of HS, wanted to be out of college, etc. Now I want aging to slow down a bit. The thing that is the worst about getting older is seeing your parents and other loved ones age and eventually pass away. When you're a kid, even a high school age kid, you assume these people will just be around forever and things will always stay the same as they were. It makes it easier to be disrespectful and generally take them for granted. I'm now 35, and this year was the first where I started noticing physical limitations with my dad especially, and that was hard. They're minor for now, but it's only going to get worse. The biggest blow to me is realizing I likely have less than 20 years left with my parents. Losing that constant source of love and support will be hard to take. They've been a rock my entire life. What parents sacrifice just so you can do something fun? Last night my husband and I sat in a line of cars for an hour and a half so our kids could see this cheesy drive-through light display in my town with Santa and other characters. 0 tenths not worth it for us, but the kids loved it and it was worth it to see them be able to do a fun Christmas activity during a pandemic. It made me think of how much my parents had to endure taking my brother and I to theme parks and stuff as a kid just to see us happy. I appreciate it infinitely more now. In my teens and 20s, I just couldn't understand how my parents were so oblivious to celebrities. They were all over TV, their names and faces blasted on everything. It seemed everybody had some strong emotionally charged opinion about every major actor, musician, director, or tabloid magnate. What are they, living under a rock? Didn't take long to find out why. Growing up, I didn't have a pre-existing list of these are famous people, I learned them as they came onto the scene. Eventually, though, they all dropped off the list one by one. The list kept updating. It's a lot harder knowing who is a household name when you also have to know who is last week's news. I was only 30 when I realized, I have no idea who famous people are anymore. I just couldn't keep up at all. I've become like my parents. Don't know, and honestly, don't care. Celebrity worship, even as cursory as simply knowing their names, is a vapid, fruitless endeavor. Today's idols are tomorrow's trash. That everything has shades of gray is a sliding scale. It is so easy to understand the world as absolutes when young. Suddenly realizing in my late teens, early 20s that basically nothing is an absolute was a total revelation that really steers my understanding of everything and undoubtedly makes me a better person. King Triton, Ariel's dad was right. She was just a child and she was not in love with the random prince she saw for all of 30 seconds. Edit. Thanks for the gold, friends. I will take it back to my hoard of trinkets from the human world. Honestly, this is a great example of what's wrong with parent-child interactions, because when we were kids, we did agree with Ariel. We were persuaded by her emotions and saw her desires as our own. As adults, we have a fully developed brain, hopefully, and more life experience, and therefore we aren't convinced by the ephemeral, but intense emotions, that kids, teenagers have. But rather than validating Ariel's feelings, interests, and desires, Triton's basically like, you're wrong for feeling that way, and also I'm going to destroy your room. Which actually happens. Parents actually do that and are then surprised when the kid turns to the only validating adult in the room, who just might be a soul-stealing witch. I really like revisiting media as an adult, not only to see how my sympathies have changed, but also to make sure that I'm not the adult who is perpetuating the conflict by not listening. Because as an adult, I expect better from myself. Edit. Well, just got back from my D&D campaign to find that this exploded. Thank you, kind strangers, for the gold and various awards. Not only did it make me smile uncontrollably, but I think it highlights an important point for all of us. There is power as listening. On a positive note, there is a freedom to being a grown-up that I didn't grasp as a kid. Just last week, a fourth grader posited the question, what's it like to be grown up? My co-teacher and I started to laugh and I said, well, it's got its up and downs. Kid asked, is it boring to pay bills? I replied, well, that's definitely a down, and it's not really boring. I searched in my head for something positive and came up with, but you know what? I can go to Arby's pretty much any time I want, so there's that. And thus erupted a Zoom screen full of kids in wonder that yes, as a grown-up, you may be able to get Arby's pretty much whenever you want. I even said something like, you'll understand when you're a grown-up and have a car, but it's pretty cool. And you know what? It is pretty cool. A parent's love for their child. A year after my granddaughter was born, my daughter was telling me how wonderful her toddler is, how smart she is, and just all around lovable she is. She then said, I don't think I could ever love anyone as much as I love my daughter. Then she paused for a moment as realization washed over her face. Dad, is this how much you love me? Bingo, kiddo, now you know. And how the opposite is true for those who had abusive parents. I read something once that really stuck with me. People with loving parents realize how much their parents love them once they have their own children. People with abusive parents realize just how cruel and fucked up their own childhood was and struggle with the realization that their parents could be that cruel to a child once they have their own kids. You rationalize the abuse away for years, then you catch a glimpse of how truly vulnerable and innocent you were as a child, and it's a whole new perspective on your experience. If you're one of those kids with abusive parents, becoming a parent yourself can really set you back, even if you feel like you've dealt with your demons. Edit. It's heartbreaking to see how strongly this resonated with so many people. I hope everyone in this situation can find their way towards some kind of peace. All these comments about money and managing your finances make me kinda sad, considering I was the opposite. I had to mature at a really young age because of my deadbeat waste of space father milking my mother's purse dry. She had nobody to vent to, and very soon I became her confidant, at 8 years old. I don't blame her, she was struggling and needed someone, and if anything we're as close as we are now because of it, but now I'm left with constant anxiety whenever she's a little low for the month and willingly let her pile her issues onto me even if I regret it after. I wish more than anything I could have had just a few more years to be a normal child. Oh well. The power of your peers. One of the gifts of middle age is you finally stop caring so much about what everyone else thinks of what you're doing, largely because you realize other people no longer care, if they ever did in the first place. Once that veil lifts, everything feels different, but until then you really have no idea how much what you decide or want has had to do with pleasing the people around you, trying to fit in with them, or at least avoiding their ire. How stupid you are right now. People tend to think they're pretty knowledgeable and wise at any given moment in their life, but then you age a decade and look back and think, wow, I was such an idiot. How did I not realize how much of a douchebag I was being, and other such things. Then you'll think, I'm glad I'm better now I'm pretty knowledgeable and wise. Then another decade passes. When I was a kid, my dad and I had a tradition every week of going to the video store and renting a movie or two to watch together. It was one of my favorite things to do, but I remember I used to get really upset at him because every single time we'd actually start to watch the movie, he would fall asleep. It wasn't until I was older that I realized that the reason he would fall asleep was because he was exhausted from working two very physically demanding jobs to try and give me the best life he possibly could. On top of that, even though he was tired, he still made an effort to try and start a little tradition with me and spend time with me. Those memories of me having to nudge my dad awake are so great in my eyes, because they made me realize what a caring and hard-working man he was and still is. Edit. Just wanted to add that my dad and I have kept our tradition going in a way, by watching a movie together every month or so. We used to go to the theaters, but obviously COVID has complicated that, so we settle for just watching something together on the couch. We did manage to get a theater to ourselves for his birthday this year. The value of discipline. You might have all the brains or potential in the world, but without discipline, everything you hold dear to you, all the smarts that you used to validate yourself as an excuse, is snatched away within the blink of an eye. It might have been cool to embody the character of that stereotypical lazy whiz kid, who gets things done when needed, when you were younger, perhaps as an adolescent, as you'd have liked to think that you'd pull it off the same. Years pass by, the laziness, the lack of effective principles starts to take a toll unless reversed, incompetency sets in, lethargy is a hobby, time management is a joke, priorities are misplaced, personal relationships are ruined, and perhaps your lack of discipline might also spiral you into substance abuse, not drugs in general, or other addictions, kickstarting a vicious cycle of pain and suffering. Edit. Remember this, the way you do something, is the way you do everything. Try to understand what this means. If this doesn't scare you, I don't know what else will. I lost my mom August 2020. I can sincerely say that I feel like I've learned more in the last 3 months than I have in my entire life. I've gone from someone who thought being right and doing the right thing was the most important thing to understanding that being kind, loving, compassionate and empathetic is so much more important. Always choose love. You will never regret it. Ever. Phases. There is nothing more patronizing or even insulting than someone older say what you think or are doing is some sort of phase you are going through, that you'll change your mind later, etc. No one should ever do that. However, when you approach middle age, you realize just how many times in your life you thought you had it all figured out, even if it meant you had decided nothing makes sense and you have no idea who you really are, and then totally changed your mind, or at least amended your philosophies. That adults hitting kids isn't normal. I grew up in an extremely abusive home, and was actively taught it was everyone treated their kids like this. I believed it, and never told anyone about what happened at home until I was 19. When I had kids of my own, I thought I would have to fight myself to not hurt them, because I didn't want to be like my parents. But I didn't. I could never say or do the things to my kids that my parents did to me. I will never. My parents are no longer a part of my life. And will never be a part of my children's lives again. My children will never see abuse as normal. Family. I think among a lot of younger people, across all generations and all people, not just currently, there's generally a feeling of, I'd rather go out and have fun. But as you get older, you start to understand the importance of having your family close, if you're in a positive position with your family. You start to want to see them more, reminisce on the good times, share memories, spend time with each other. And family doesn't necessarily mean those you share blood with or your childhood years, but the family you consider to be family. A number of negative behaviors I associated with age made more sense to me as I realized how much more tired I was at 40 than at 20, even from doing exactly the same things. Inflexibility about plans, irritation with noise, distractions, shortness in dealing with frustrations, ossifying political and personal beliefs, they all just feel more tempting when you're exhausted and don't want to sink time and energy into arguments, explanations, or replanning things. It's not an excuse. I work hard to avoid those things now that I can see that biological forces will keep pushing me toward them. But man, it's a real battle sometimes when you just want a peaceful night without some other damn thing that needs you to work on it. Enjoy the time you have, like seriously enjoy it. Take pictures when you're in middle school and high school. I maybe have a total of 15 pictures with friends from HS. Why? BC I felt like it was going to last forever. Did it? Nope. Thankfully, because of social media and younger people having phones, they're able to stay in contact. But when I was younger and playing Xbox 360, I had a lot of online friends who said, "I'll be on tomorrow," and were never on. I miss them. Just really enjoy your joy. Take pictures. Because time will fly. Consistency and effort greater than raw intelligence. That's why I resented the label, gifted. I understand that such children may be advanced and not fit in academically with their peers, but in other ways, you're still a child. Emotionally, socially, hobby-wise, there's so much out there that should be celebrated just as much as raw intelligence, or even more. Learning to fail and work hard from that failure. And also, just because you pick up things with almost no effort doesn't mean you won't have to work hard in the future. Give me a kid who worked hard for that C over someone who coasted for an A any day. Hard work and consistent effort have more value than just being praised as smart. It's the reason why I almost failed my first year of college after academics felt effortless every year before college. Yet my brother, who got C's and D's in high school, is on his way to medical school, proud of that kid. The value of real friends. I guess I am still young, but I never realized how lucky I am to have friends that genuinely care versus the ones who I talk to for the sake of having someone to talk to. I realized who was who in quarantine. Some would text for help on HW, not a bad thing, but not something that would make our friendship last. And some who would ask how I was. Those ones who asked about my mental health and who I could FaceTime while crying and feeling alone. Those are the people I never realized how important they are. No one really cares what you think, and if you feel the need to blast your opinion all over social media, internet, everyday conversation, etc., you come across more like a pretentious douche than someone who may or may not be informed on top of that. You are not going to change most people's minds. People want to argue with Democrats, liberals, socialists, progressives, Republicans, conservatives, Trump supporters. But at the end of the day, most people don't really listen to what the other person is saying, and the other side isn't listening to them either. It's just arguing back and forth to get yourself worked up and pissed off about something that you honestly have no control over. I do believe we should listen to each other's viewpoints and respect one another's positions. But if your real goal is to change someone's mind, it's better to just walk away because it ain't happening. I teach high school and I get some students who almost never focus on their work because they're too caught up in personal drama. They'll be sitting there gossiping about some he said she said BS. I'll tell them to be quiet and get on with their work, and the response is, "No miss, you don't understand. This is really important. There's serious drama happening." I try to explain that their education is more important than whatever petty BS they're discussing. That they are likely going to fail because they are so caught up in crap that literally does not matter, and that failing will have a negative impact on the rest of their life. But to them, education is irrelevant and gossip is life or death. Working and the cost of living versus the amount of time one has to do that and the things they want to do or enjoy doing as a child. It's very easy to say that school sucks and that you would prefer working because it's just like school but you get paid. How bad can it be? Mentality quickly gets shattered when you really start your career and find out how little you actually make compared to ever-rising cost of living across all aspects of living. You end up working so hard during work hours that the time you have off is spent resting from the emotional, mental and physical drain that the daily grind that is work has become for so many people. And when you finally do muster up the energy to get something useful done in your off hours, it's generally few and far between and only adds to the strain you feel. The modern system mankind has developed around work and relaxation might work in getting the job done, but it is horrifyingly taxing on those who endure it. My dad learned his first foreign language at age 37, and his second at age 39. I was 2 when I started on my first one and 10 on my second, so they came really easily to me. I couldn't understand why my dad had such a terrible accent and was so frustrated trying to learn what was clearly, I thought, a piece of cake. At age 41 I tried to learn just a few phrases of Czech before visiting Prague. I did not happen. Nothing new would stick in my brain. All I wanted to learn was, "Hello, thank you, where's the ladies' room," and, "Where do I catch a train?" and I failed utterly. That was really eye-opening to me, and, since then, I have mad respect for my dad. Coming home to house, that's a mess. I learned over time how my mother felt. Especially when she would come from 12-hour shifts to a bunch of dishes that aren't clean. When I was really young, I didn't understand, but I started to completely understand why parents feel that. I wouldn't wanna come home to a sink full of dishes I never used. Sometimes we make life more infuriating for our parents and we don't realize until we are older.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like the video. And if you are new, subscribe and click on the bell icon.